Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today I'm just going to be getting into a little bit of a tutorial on using the Canon R6V. Now this is what we're recording on right now. So I'm still just getting used to this thing, but this is more of a tutorial from the perspective of if you don't know what you're doing, you've never been really into cameras like that. Maybe you're coming from a photography space, so you kind of have an idea of cameras, but maybe you're not really heavy into video. And I'm just doing coverage of like the basics of the video for somebody who like really you don't know nothing what you're doing, because I'm learning some aspects about this camera, but I really wanted to present it in a way that really just kind of covers some of the basics to get you shooting, especially if you don't really know that much about what's going on, whether it's like codec. How are you going to just be able to get things to run? Like you're like, I want to record. Maybe you want to record for like family events, this and that. No, normally you would think somebody who has this type of camera wouldn't do that, because this camera is definitely a step up. Something like the R6V would kind of really be more into the space of like, say, just a regular family vacation type of like filming. But I do feel that this is something that could benefit for that as too, because I believe the codec probably is like the same. I'm not 100% sure, but then in addition to that, yeah, it's just really, say you might be a person who, like I said, maybe you want room to grow. So you got this camera, you want to know some of the basics, and you want room to grow. Because if you were someone who, say, was shooting photography with like maybe an older digital SLR coming from the 5D series or something like that, you might be in a space where you're like, okay, I don't want to downgrade from the level of the camera, but I just need to know these newer features or get it like a base sense of like all these crazy menus, because there's a lot of menus to run through on these things, and not as simple as they were. Like previously I was using a 6D Mark II, and the recording settings for that was a lot more simple. There wasn't multiple codecs, there was one codec. There was different types of frame rates and resolution, but nonetheless it wasn't even that much. That didn't even go to 4K. It was like 1080p and I think like a 720p, but I did the 1080p. And like I said, you had, I think it was 60 frames rate, 30 frames rate, 24 frames per second, but it wasn't that heavy. So if you're like me coming from that space, this is a video to kind of get you guys going and kind of learning how that really goes. Like I said, for me, even from a hobby perspective, or someone who's trying to get into it for other purposes. So we're going to jump into that. We're going to jump from behind the camera, and I'm just going to kind of fiddle around with some things and guys show you guys how everything kind of works and like the layout of each menu, and for the aspects that really affect you towards that basics phase, not like the heavy stuff. There's plenty of videos that are going to be for that. For the heavy guys, are going to teach you all the heavy stuff. This is really just kind of showing you some small basics to get you going. Let's jump into it. All right, you guys, so we're gonna get into pretty much first we're just gonna get into the layout of things, and then we're gonna jump into the details of the menu. So first let me take the camera lens off. Now hopefully I'm able to stay in frame with everything at all times, because it's kind of hard from behind the camera. But first, these are the hookup points. I'm not gonna untake this off, but you have the HDMI, you have the USB-C, headphone jack, and mic. Obviously that is for the what is the remote, but that's something a lot of people don't really use nowadays, because you have digital ways of doing that, like Bluetooth and whatnot. This is the hot shoe area, which once again, something you probably wouldn't really need. I leave that in there. I don't use the that specialized port right there, because only certain things are able to utilize that. And I'm using this thing primarily for video, so I'm just going to go over video features for this right now, you guys. Like I said, there's plenty of other people who kind of really dive into this stuff, who go really deeper into all the aspects of it, but I'm coming at it from a point of somebody who might not really be, you know, might be a little, what's the word I'm looking for? This might be a little overwhelming to them, a little bit intimidating, and we're just trying to make it a little bit easier. So button layout is, as you could see here, I'm not gonna go over all these things yet until I get into, got a record button there, until I open up the menu system, because certain these things, when we press them, you're gonna see what they do, and it's easier for me to show you rather than just tell you about them. So let's start off here, and I am going to turn this on. Now, when it comes to these features here, matter of fact, what we're gonna do to make it a little bit easier to see what's on the screen, I'm gonna put this on, and that will help us a little bit as far as seeing what's on the screen. So going over some of the items that can be pressed, we have button 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 1, 2, 3. And like I said, 4 was over there. So, and all these are buttons that are customizable. You can customize them if you want. All the ones that are numbered can be customized. You have here as well, peaking, zebra, audio status, and that's where your focusing points when you're in just a regular camera mode. Here it gives you like the zone thing as well, but different types of zones, whatever. So yeah, but and then audio status here. Audio status just shows you what's going on, but it doesn't allow you to change it here. So let's first jump into, we're going to jump into all the external buttons first. So first you have this dial here is kind of a, you know, I don't know if other cameras had this, but for this is the first time you're coming into mirrorless like myself. Now you have wheels to dedicate for the Trinity. So you have this top wheel here navigates the shutter. This one here navigates the ISO. And then this wheel here navigates the aperture. Now you also have this joystick here, which usually is good for navigating the menu. It also could be used for the autofocus point. And as far as these buttons here, we're going to start with number 1, autofocus on. Now, I'm not one of those kind of people who really utilize this. So to be honest with you, I've never utilized this in photography. So I'm just showing you what it does, but it's not a thing that I've actually really used before. So I can't really tell you the benefit of it. But I think if you're coming in this from a novice standpoint, you just want to know how to do some basic video, that's not going to play a big role. Like I said, there's going to be people who can dive into this stuff deeper with you in regards to like the pro features or whatever the case is. This right here is to zoom in. And it's just good for just making sure you got your focus. This right here, I don't even know actually what that one does. But like I said, we're really just gonna get into the really the things that are just to get you started. So this right here, number 4, I don't even like really using it, but what it does is allow you to shuffle between your picture style or your auto white balance. Now, let me put this back on so you guys can see better once again. Now, this allows you, that symbol at the bottom there is this symbol. That's what that wheel looks like, because you're gonna see it's distinct from the other ones. This top one here is that one. So it allows you to navigate like that. And then obviously if you come over here, you do the same to control these things. And then the autofocus points right there. But like I said before, there are other ways to do these things where I don't really like using that. So for example, number 5 is white balance. And I find it easier to control white balance like that, at least to bring it up. Number 6 is to go live, but you'd have to set things up. So we're not gonna worry about that right now. Like I said, we're worried about easy shooting. Color allows you to enter into the picture style. We're gonna go deeper into that in a little bit, but this allows you to do picture style, which is always something Canon had. Most cameras have that, like a basic for the photos. It's like your for landscape, you know, like your standard pictures, landscape, things of that sort. I'm not gonna dive too heavy into that. I'm gonna show you the basic standard one, but we're gonna go heavy into the new color filters area, because that gives you like a sense of like color grading built into the camera, like preset, almost like color grading. And then this right here is for when you're doing things like you come in here and then you would do things like change from Canon 709, you have Canon log, Canon log 3, Canon log 2, Canon log 3. This is like your standard 709. So we're not going to dive much beyond that as well. I just wanted to show you guys that. But the main one we're going to end up focusing on is color filters. And so, but we'll jump into that in a little bit. So right now, that was just showing you all the external buttons that really affect things. This is going to be the button you're going to be pressing almost all the time, and that is menu. So what I'm going to do now is just angle things a little bit differently, so that way we can see them a little bit better. So first, let's start with recording size. Now, we could jump in here, and then what you see is, we'll use the wheeled here. You've got 4K D. Well, first, hold on. Let me back out of this first and let you guys know. So first you would come here, and this is gonna determine the codec. Now, like I said, if you're coming from a space of not knowing that much, this lowest one is the one that is easiest. And I'm going to talk like that. I'm not going to get into the whole H2.5, H2, this, all this other kind of stuff. The AVCS, both of those are a little bit easier or light in terms of the codecs. The other two above it are a little bit higher, but nonetheless, the 8-bit is the lowest. Now, what I found, and the RAW is the highest, what I found is that with my computer, and my computer's a little bit dated, and it's not all that powerful for modern times, I can handle this codec, and I have trouble with some of the other codecs. I have a Mac that predates the M chips. So if you are in that category, or maybe you got a Windows laptop, maybe a $300, $400 Windows laptop that's not all that strong, you might want to be filming in that codec, because it's the only one that's going to really allow you to, where you can really handle it. Now we're going to jump on this, the highest codec, without going into RAW, just to show you guys that when you come into the movie, the recording settings, you can navigate all these things. This is the quality you have over here, and then this is the frames. The middle one's the frames, and then over here you have like the this is long op. This is like the compression type, but within that, but they don't really, you don't have multiple options when it's like this. There are other options when you go into the other types of codecs, like say RAW and other things of that sort. So starting here, these two are the main ones, because obviously you can't touch that last one that says long op. You have full HD, you've got 2K, you've got 4K U, and then you got 4K U fine. I'm not really too sure what the U means, but you could see that nothing really changes on here. But fine is, I'm going to assume the fine is maybe it's trying to say uncompressed. I'm not really too sure, but fine is where it's scaled down from the 7K sensor directly. So it's going to be a little bit more heavy. You have the 4KD and the 4KD fine here as well, but this one is a higher resolution because it's a little more wider than these. So, but if you want to just be able to film light, and you want to be able to edit, and you don't have a strong computer, you just want to get into basic whatever, you could just use full HD 1080p, or you could do the 10K. I mean, sorry, the 2K. But the truth is that that's just making it wider. So not really more resolution overall. When you come into here, this is your standard 30 frames per second. You can do the whole 24 frames per second. Obviously, you're rounding up. 60 frames per second. This is in full HD, 120 and 180. But like I said, I'm just coming at this from a basis of anybody who is just trying to be able to start recording, and you're having trouble as far as just, okay, I can't handle the heavy stuff. All the other codec, I'm not diving too much into that, because all those who really know what they're doing, they're going to do that. I'm really covering this from the perspective, you're going to hear me say this a bunch of times, for those who don't really know a lot what they're doing. Now you might say, well, why would someone like that have this type of camera? Maybe they want some room to grow, but they also are just kind of getting into things and are just trying to like figure it out. Or maybe they want to do content creation and they just want to be able to, you know, get things working up front. Now, open gate, you could turn open gate on, but once you do, it really changes a lot of things. So these bottom codecs go away. You only have these codecs here to do open gate with, and then you have RAW. And then here, it says MP4. This is more like, if I'm not mistaken, this is more of obviously a compressed form, because the OpenGate is really meant for the RAW. So this is more of like a compressed version. You can still see that the megabytes on it are tremendous in terms of what it's doing. So this is still a lot of space that it takes if you're doing that. And then obviously you could just jump into RAW, and then at that point you can see 2,600 megabytes. It's a whole lot. You know, you got a couple of different frame rates for this, for the open gate like that. You got RAW, and then you got RAW light. So yeah. Now, if you're doing open gate, like I said, I don't want to stay on this too long, but if you're doing open gate, then you get a couple of different here. So you start getting some of those different codecs. So yeah, but anyway, like I originally said to you guys before, now you can't go back to the other setting without first taking off that. Now, one other thing that I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna jump right here for a little second, and we're gonna go through every single menu mostly throughout this process. But if you come here to the wrench, the first menu on the wrench, and you go to recording function card, if you come over to record option, because this is for taking photos, I believe this is for both, and this is for when you're doing the movies recording. Now, if you come here, and if you happen to have standard is just your regular recording on one card, but if you have more than one card, right? Like you got that CF Express, and then you got an SD card. You could now make the main and do the proxy. Now, if you do that, now you could go back. You could go back. I'm not going to click on it right now, but you would be able to then go back here, go into the RAW and the open gate. Now you would get a proxy of the open gate. So you would use the proxy, which is a smaller compressed version. So you could utilize that open gate field of view, which is essentially, for those who don't really know, it's almost like it's giving you almost vertical and horizontal, or portrait and landscape view in one shot. You would then have to kind of crop it in post, but it gives you that option. So that way, say if you filmed it and then you did a landscape view, and then you said, I want to make a short of this video, you would then also be able to go into post, like say iMovie or something like that, and then now make it landscape, make it a landscape view. I'm sorry, portrait view. And then so you could do that on that same one. But to be honest with you, if you're just, you know, you're recording one thing, you know, I wouldn't really do all that, but I just wanted to tell you guys that it's available, that's something that's available. So I'm gonna put this back the way I had it. So now movie cropping is interesting, because if you guys have I have an adapter on this. Now, if you guys have an adapter and you guys were to use, say, a EFS lens from Canon, it would automatically activate crop movie mode, and then it will, just to make sure you don't have any issues with the lens. And I'm assuming that's the case with the RFS lenses, but if you have the full frame RF lenses, then that won't be the case, but you could actively choose to activate that. Sound recording, the only thing I'm going to say here that you really need to know about is you come here and it starts at 16-bit. You want to switch that to 24-bit to give you more channels. But to be honest with you, outside of that, like you know, it gives you 4 channels versus 2, because you can only have 2 channels on 16-bit. Just do that so that way things are, you know, like you're getting a better sound quality. And that, I would just simply say as simple as that. Like, you know, you don't really need to know anything beyond that. When would you use 16? When would you not? Don't even bother to worry about that. Built-in mic. Now, I have it on auto right now because I have the manual settings when I am using a built-in, the external mic. I don't touch these settings when it's the built-in mic. But what I will tell you is this, from my experiences, this might help you guys with a little bit of a guide. If I'm using a shotgun mic, I leave it right on this level, which is like 47. You could do 48 if you want, but I leave it at the natural space at 47 because the shotgun mic, the one I have, doesn't have a power source, doesn't have any kind of gain controls on the microphone. So the gain controls here are kind of left by default in a neutral space that kind of works. Now, if I am using a lav mic, what I found is that the place I prefer to be at is about 18. I've done 16 and it's nice, but it's a little too low. And then I've done 25 and it felt like a little bit too kind of peaking a little bit. And so 20 or 18 should be like around the sweet spot. If you have a wireless lav mic, but when I have it on that setting, what I do is my wireless mic has a 3-point increase gain. I'll show you guys that right now. I'm using Hollyland, which I reviewed on the channel before, and it has a 3-point gain. So when I keep that about 18, I increase this to the max at 3. So just to give you guys an idea of how to navigate your sound on a basic level, like I said, you know, once you guys get more up there skilled with it, you guys will kind of navigate it the way you want. But yes, I put it always. I would suggest put it on a manual for that. So that's a good basis for you guys to start if you're not really too sure when it comes to if you're using external mic. And I definitely recommend using external mic. Now this just says status. It doesn't really do anything other than just kind of show you what's going on, I guess, which mics are being received and whatnot. So yes, here it says it like there's 4, because it has 4 channels, but since it's using the onboard mic, all of them are being activated. If you had a plug-in mic, it would work differently. Like say 4 different mics. Coming over to here, obviously this is not really too much a big deal. You might want to adjust your ISO settings, and that's about it. How you want the range to go. But know this, when it comes to this camera, the base ISO is, and I'm going to jump into something real quick just to show you guys this. On the Q menu, when you press Q, you could press it, have it set to where you could press it 3 times and it goes to 3 different things. But here, and I'm going to, where is the ISO settings? Oh, I'm sorry, it's not inside here, it's just right on here. Sometimes I get confused. So ISO. Now you can control the ISO, like I said, from the, let me back out. You can control the ISO from here. Now the whole time I've just been using this wheel to select from the menu system and whatnot, but you control the ISO from here. So let me zoom back in and you can see that, but you can click on here and you can register these. Now the way that works is that you would go like say 200, I go to register and then I click it on that spot and now there it goes. But I'm going to bring it back to 100, register, and it's 100. Now those give you your 3 preset ones. Now this has native ISO of 800 and 6400, but 100 is always a good place, so I put the 100 as the bottom, 800 and then 6400. You could use all the other ones in between, but though the cleanest should be 6400, 800, and I still think 100 is going to be clean no matter what, because even though that's not considered its native ISO for video, 100 is still just the very lowest, and so I'm pretty sure in my mind that this still would be a clean image, at least from what I've seen. So, but I wanted to mention that to you guys mainly because when it comes to this ISO speed settings, just know that this has dual native ISOs. And so regardless of what you're using here, you want to register those ones that you want to use. So that way, you know, on a quick setting, you kind of do that. Now, if you're just here, just trying to get video, just put it on auto and you're fine. If you're not at that level to understanding what all that means, but just know that it's probably cleanest at 100, 800 and 6400 in terms of noise. Coming over here, color mode is the same thing that we were saying here before, but this is, now you have some of these other features here. When you have it in this mode, this is more for like when you're shooting raw or you're gonna do color editing. Picture style is for all the ones that used to be for photo. So we're gonna dive into that really quickly just so I can show you guys what that looks like. So the way it used to always look like with photos, and then you would use these same ones for video back when, you know, you had the Canon 5D Mark II, the 60D, all those other ones that were the digital SLRs back then. They didn't have they didn't have like a RAW, they didn't have a log, Canon log, they have none of that. And you pretty much had to use this as your way of, the same way you'd use for your pictures, you would use them for your color profile. And these are picture styles, what they're known as. So you pretty much have the run of the gamut of standard, which is kind of like a very vivid, but your baseline. Portrait is for portraits, kind of really emphasizing like red tones, reds and yellows. Landscape, which emphasizes blues and greens. And you can change all these parameters if you go into here, and then you can like change them. So for example, you could click on here and then change that to be 7, but this is the standard. It lets you know what the standard is. Data settings, picture style, cancel. We're gonna go back. So I just wanted to show you that you can change them. Fine detail, and if you go on the Canon website, you can know what all these ones actually mean. I forget what fine detail is because that one's a little new. Neutral is supposed to be a neutral image, somewhat flat, and then faithful is trying to be realistic. So it's almost similar to neutral, but it's not quite, because neutral is a little more flat, and faithful is trying to say like this is just a plain image of what you see. And that's why you can see they don't really have anything going on for sharpness. I like to put my sharpness up all the way. Usually monochrome is going to be black and white, and you can go inside here and find filters like sepia, and I think there's another one like green. Let's take a look at it real quick. If you come down to filters, and you can click on it, you see yellow, orange, red, green. They took away sepia. That's interesting. I didn't bother to check inside this. Normally you have sepia in this, and they took it away, which is interesting. It would be like yellow, sepia. Maybe they use orange as sepia, and I gotta check that another time. And I think they used to be like green, but apparently now it is gone. I think part of that reason too is that you also have the filters that we're going to get into. And so standard is the one that, like I said, I always like to use as my baseline. But what I do, I'm going to show you what my parameters are, because I really like this. I always do sharpness 7, and I usually do contrast +1, saturation +1, and I leave tone 0. Now, you don't have to follow that one. You could leave standard as the base standard. But I would say if you don't know nothing about what you're shooting in, just shoot in the regular standard, because it's going to give you pleasing colors without being over the top in any direction, one or the other, but it's still going to be pleasing, and you don't have to do no kind of color grading. But like I said, I adjusted mine to the way I just showed you, and I prefer that. That's what I prefer. Now we're going to get into the color filters. Now, here's what you have: story teal, story teal and orange, story magenta, story blue, which I feel those story ones are kind of like movie-like. Pale teal and orange, which is a nice one. Retro green, sepia tone, and that's why I think kind of replaces that other one a little bit, like in the monochrome to a degree. Accent red, tasty warm, tasty cool, bright amber, bright white, clear light blue, clear blue, and clear amber. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to insert right now. I did a visual on myself of all those filters because I feel like those filters are, like I said, if you guys are getting into this and you know nothing about color grading, this is a way for someone who's a novice to almost feel like they are, you know, doing color grading. It's baked in, similar to the picture profiles, but the difference is these are more supposed to be for the video aspect specifically. So in that clip, I'm going to show you standard, how my standard looks, so you get an idea how the standard looks in general, even though my standard, the parameters that I made, just tweak it a little bit, but it gives you an idea of standard. And I'm going to go through all the color filters in that. So I'm going to insert that clip right now. Hey guys, so right now we are in picture style, and this is the standard picture style. We're going to show off the filter types, that are on this. So that's different than picture style. The filter types are almost like a finished color grading. Sorry, I had a brain fart there. Color grading type of preset. So for those who are not familiar with things like color grading, this is almost like giving you color grading, but without knowing how to color grade, without shooting in some kind of log, without shooting in raw or anything like that, and having to color grade. So that's what the filters are for. So what we're shooting in right now, just to give a base standard, is I like to shoot in picture style standard, which is always Canon standard for shooting like photos and stuff like that. But while you can change the parameters, I usually like to shoot with sharpness 7, that goes up to 7. I shoot with the other parameters usually go from 0 in the middle and then 4 on each end. So for saturation, for things like this is saturation 1, contrast 1, and leave the tone at 0. Now normally when I'm shooting, say something like landscape photos or anything like that, I would put my saturation at 3 when I used to take photos. But I like this setting for photos when I didn't want to do over the top, and I translated that into doing video because it's more pleasing, especially when it comes to certain types of skin tones and you don't want to punch them out. Me being a dark skin, when you have too much saturation, it actually makes that pop too much and it doesn't look natural. So this is a way to kind of look natural. So this is the setting that we have for here. So I'm going to jump into the filters and we're going to go over each one, you guys. So this filter type is story teal and orange. I really like this. It gives almost like a movie feel to it, but it's in between from feeling like a little bit warm and a little bit cool. I feel like it's just right in between. But yeah, this is story teal and orange. So this is story magenta, and I feel that this one is also pretty nice. It does within also give that movie feel quality, and I feel all the ones that are considered story have that, and the next one's going to be story as well. But yes, I do think that it has a nice look to it in regards to like almost like that movie kind of look, a little bit more warmer though. I think the other color was, this might be, I don't know if it's cooler or not, but the other one just felt like a little bit more on point. This one feels a little bit close to it, but yeah, let me know what you guys think. Now this filter is story blue. This one's definitely a lot more cooler than the other two that we just did as far as the story ones. And this is a nice look if you want that kind of, I don't know, maybe noir type of look going on a little bit. Now keep in mind too, you can't alter these like picture styles. You can't alter these. So whatever they are, as the filters, what they are, can't change any of their parameters. But I do like this one. I do feel it's a little bit cooler, but I do like the look of it. This is story blue. So this is pale teal and orange. So similar to the very first filter was story teal and orange. pale teal and orange definitely feels a little bit, I think, cooler and less saturated than that other one, but I still think it looks nice. Don't mind I'm looking at the screen so I can help describe what it's looking like, but it's definitely still nice. I feel like it kind of fades from that strong movie tone. I feel those other ones give the story ones give a little bit more of this kind of movie tone, hyper movie tone, but this feels definitely a nice color to kind of really, these teal and orange definitely gives, this pale teal and orange, but all the teal and orange just seem to give a nice color tone towards something that I think is very balanced. So this is retro green, and I feel that it's definitely muted. It has a very muted look with a slight overtone of green, almost like an old photo kind of look, like from a photo album. So it may not be your cup of tea in terms of for movie kind of, if you're trying to look for that movie look, but straight out of the camera, but it definitely is something that might appeal to you if you want that look. It definitely, like I said, has almost that vintage camera look going on, at least in my opinion, from what I'm looking here on the screen. So this is sepia tone. So it's not the same as if you were to go into picture style and put monochrome and put sepia. That's more of that traditional sepia look with the black and white-ish. This adds some extra normal color to it. So when they say sepia tone, it's almost like an overlay of sepia over regular colors. It also, similar to the previous filter, has almost a little bit more of a muted look, but like I said, it's sepia tone. It's not sepia, because like I said, if you go into your picture style and you do sepia, sepia is almost like putting that sepia color over a base black and white. This is putting that sepia tone over colors, so you're still going to see the other colors. Understand that's the little bit difference between that and just regular sepia. So this is accent red, and I guess it's supposed to appear a little bit more warmer than, say, a more neutral color, but coming off sepia, it looks like it's cooler than the sepia tone, but it definitely, if you compare it to a more neutral tone, it should have almost a slight warmer overlay if you came from a neutral tone. And that's not considering standard picture style that we started with in the beginning, because that has a bit of saturation, so it might be a little bit warmer than that, but definitely I'm thinking more from a perspective of a complete neutral tone. This probably has a little bit warmer of an accent because it's red accent, but I feel like it's very minimal. It's not overpowering at all, so you might like this and find it a fan of this type. I do think overall it feels like a very neutral profile. Neutral filter, I'm sorry, I want to get that correct, because the color picture styles is different, so they have different names for these things, but these are the filters. So this is tasty warm, and I feel that it definitely makes things pop. It makes things a lot more brighter. If this is the vibe you're going for, maybe if you want to film something that gives it that kind of bright and happy moment, because sometimes you can use these filters to tell a story in themselves in terms of just brightening up a scene. Maybe you want that more dark noir scene, you use a different filter. In this, there might be a moment where things are sunshiny and happy, you use this, but definitely this feels very bright and a lot more of like a sunshiny vibe to it. I didn't change the exposure or anything like that, and yet you see how it is just kind of like popping more than the other filters. So this is Tasty Cool. It definitely feels a lot more obviously cooler than Tasty Warm, but still within that bright dynamic. I feel definitely a lot more brighter than, like I said, some of the other ones, which then reduces some of that punchiness of the colors, I think. I won't say that it's as muted as some of the other filters that we've seen in the middle, but it definitely feels pretty bright, a little bit flat, not super flat, but definitely more in that realm, probably because of the cool aspect of it, but definitely more inside that realm of neutral, yet a little bit more towards that flat direction, but not completely. So this is Bright Amber, and I definitely feel that this has, once again, almost this very almost old school filmic look, but like a very warm, heavily like almost orange tone coming over the look. So it definitely gives this like I want to say it's almost like a vibe of someone having one of those kind of not fluorescent, I'm sorry, those old tungsten light bulbs with the shades over them, just where the room looks yellow, and that's almost like this strong hue that it's putting over. That's the vibe that I get from it. I don't know if you would want to use this for a finished product, any kind of filming that you're doing, but you could definitely see the tone of it is that. But it also feels a little bit more flat as well. I feel like that overtone stops the colors from punching, in my opinion. So this is bright white, and similar to the bright amber, bright white feels very I want to say it feels almost like, I don't want to use the word washed out. It feels very not very saturated. I'm sorry, not saturated. Contrasty. It feels very low in contrast, so it feels pretty flat. There's a flatness about it. And I think the other one had that too, but the bright amber had this, like I said, hue that's kind of going over everything, over that flatness. This being bright white, it doesn't feel like it's bright white. It doesn't feel like extra bright, but it feels very flat, monotone. I wouldn't even call it neutral. It just feels very flat, almost like a log type of profile, a little bit, not too heavy into that direction, but in a minor way. So this is clear light blue, and it feels very bright, almost like washed out in terms of like the highlights. Like I said, I haven't changed any of the settings. So just to give you even though I didn't recap this in the beginning, the settings here are, or at least the beginning of this filter relay, I might end up doing it some part in the video where I add it in. But I'm doing 1/60th, because it's 30 frames per second, 1/60th. The aperture is 2.8, and it's at 400 ISO. And that's been the constant throughout all these filters. But you see right now, everything looks like it's blown out, like highlight, the wall looks blown out, like highlights are just blown out. I wouldn't even say highlights. It's like everything's just blown out of nowhere, because those weren't the highlight areas before. That's what this color, what this filter is doing. So it gives you a sense of what it's doing. I think maybe some of these filters might require you to adjust your settings and your exposure for these filters, because these filters are doing other things. But clearly I just want to say that because I hadn't changed any of my specs, but you can see the wall looks very bright. So this is clear purple, still within that same vein, but it almost has this purple hue over it that actually kind of tones it down a little bit from that clear light blue or whatever that last one was. It definitely tones it down a little bit, but it's still within that same vein, just slightly purple over it. So I don't find it to be one that would be very appealing, but at the same time, it's still there as an option if you found creatively like you want to go in that direction. But I feel the last one, and I feel this one, might require you to change your exposure, because it definitely becomes a little bit overpowering in this filter. And this is clear amber. Definitely a little bit more neutral than the other clear ones that we just mentioned, but a little more in between. So it feels like usable for something without being extreme to any extreme ends, but at the same time too, I definitely don't feel like it makes anything pop. It's not over the top. If you're gonna go with something like this, I would then just go for something like I said, the standard picture profile, like I told you in the beginning, and I'm gonna show that at the end. But yeah, it's okay, but I don't feel like it has any strong direction in any direction. I'm not really a big fan of these clear ones, clear filters. I prefer some of the ones in the beginning that were a little more stronger in tone to give you that kind of more finished look in the direction that you want to be in. But yeah, this is clear amber. And so here we return back to, like I said, the standard picture profile. This is not one of the filters, this is the picture profiles. And you could use these instead. These ones give you control of the parameters, like I said in the beginning. Once again, I'm going to recap this standard. I have it set for sharpness 7. I have the saturation +1. I have the contrast +1. And I have the tone 0. So it's neutral, no, not in one more direction or the other, because tone usually controls the reds and the yellows. So just keep it in the middle. But like I said, this is a very neutral, in my opinion, profile, that picture profile in a setting that really kind of captures good colors without being too unrealistic or anything of that sort. But like I said, this was really just a rundown to compare the filters. So this is like my baseline, so you kind of see how those compare. All right, guys, let's get back to checking out the dynamics of this camera. Okay, so we are back now. Those are the color filters. So you could see how they give you this creative feel. So like I said, if you're just jumping in and you're a novice, just have at it. They're really cool. I think they're really cool. I've played around with color grading before, but I'm not really good at it, and I've got to learn it better. But I was able to do it before, but it seems so tedious. So if you are getting into content creation and somebody who just wants to do things, or you just want to film the family, or just have fun projects, I really think that's the way to go. The color filters, or even just like I said, the pitch. If you're doing basic shooting, the picture styles is fine, especially standard. If you want to get creative, do the color filters. You don't really need to worry about things like HD movie mode as far as the basics. Like I said, I'm just talking the basics, so I'm not trying to deter you from this stuff. I'm just saying like what you need to get started if you don't know anything about really shooting movies and you just want to get into it. Auto light optimizer, you don't really have to worry about that also, but if you wanted to, it's disabled in manual mode. By standard, it's going to be I just put it right now in aperture priority mode, and then otherwise you could have it on low, standard, high. I usually don't have it on at all. That is auto light optimizer just tries to bring out the shadows, and then highlight tone priority tries to help with the blown out highlights. But either way, they're not things you have to do, but if you wanted to, you could have it to like a small level. You don't have to go like extreme level on it, but I would say just stay away from it for now. If you're just kind of new to recording, you really don't need it really at this point. Auto white balance, white balance. I would just leave it on auto white balance if you're new to this. But if you dive into it, you can go into, these settings here, which you have. The only thing I'm going to tell you is this: if you're in auto white balance, because you have all these other ones, and these are, applied directly to the type of lighting, but usually auto white balance is pretty good. So you have daylight, shade, cloud, tungsten, white fluorescent, obviously flash. I would say the only one that's, for the most part, auto white. If you're just new to everything, auto white is just really don't want to leave it in. The only thing I'm going to say here is this: come here, click on this, and then you have two types. You have ambient priority and white priority. When I used to use my Canon 6D Mark II, this didn't say ambient priority. It says something like, I think it was like auto, I don't know if it said tungsten, but essentially what it is that this will take the light, and I'm sure they just changed the wording, but it means the same thing. Essentially, say if you're indoors with indoor lighting and it's got like yellow lighting, tungsten lighting, this is gonna still make the vibe feel yellowish. Even though it's trying to do auto white balance, still gonna have a little bit of yellowish tone, and this is gonna try to make it more just pure white. So that's the one thing I would adjust if you guys are just gonna have it in auto white balance and you're not really too familiar. Other than that, I would leave all the rest of this stuff alone because you're just gonna get yourself more confused. Lens correction, I wouldn't even bother with that. Noise reduction, you could leave it on standard. High ISO noise reduction means when you up the ISO and you start getting gain noise, because when you increase the ISO, you get noise. For those who are unfamiliar, most of you guys probably are. This just helps with that built-in camera processing to help with that. But essentially, you could do low or you could do standard. Sometimes when it's very high, in theory, I believe you lose some detail, but it's not even something that we would even notice because cameras got so good nowadays that either setting you put it on, I don't think you're going to have an issue, but I would just leave it on standard, whatever it's coming as, or low. Pre-recording settings, I wouldn't bother with that as well. Tally lamp, obviously I would definitely keep that on. Now, image stabilization, if you were walking around with it, you're doing video recording and you want it to have image stabilization, because this camera comes with image stabilization, I would stay away from digital stabilization, because all that is cropping to keep the camera from looking like it's moving. But the IS mode, the actual stabilization for the camera, this is cool, but the only thing I would tell you is this, just so you know. If your lens does not have IS on it, you control it from here and just go on or off. If your lens has stabilization, essentially it's going to match what the stabilization is on the lens. So if you turn the little piece on the side of the lens, the little switch to off, it's going to turn off the in-body stabilization or the IBIS and the one for the lens. You can't separate the two. So just know that. This is also something that you guys wouldn't really need to bother with. Like I said, for the basics, shooting info. The only thing I'm going to say on this screen that I would tell you is keep all these on. What that means is that it's going to cycle through all of these types of screens when you press the Q button. So that way you get all three of them, because otherwise when you press, you might get, if you unclick, say this, you're only going to get that screen. And maybe you don't want just that screen. Maybe you want, you know, the other screen, because a lot of times too, this is the screen I prefer. So coming out of that, just for a second, if I press the Q button, you see it brings up this one. I don't really like this menu setup here. You can use this to scroll down through it. I don't like that, so I press it the second time, and the Q2 one gives you this layout, which to me is a lot more just, you know, you press the one you want. It's a little bit easier to navigate. That shows me my volume controls. You know, if I want to go to the color profile, which, you know, you could do that with the color button there, but nonetheless, this just gives you a quicker way. Just if you're not familiar with all the buttons yet, brings it all up. And then this allows you to go into the picture mode that you want, or color filter, or, you know, those other kind of log and whatever. But if you want to come here, you could do that and exit out, and then it's going to go to the color filter that you last had it set on. Or if you go to picture style, it's going to go to the picture style you last had it set on. So yes, if you want to change those things though, press that button there is the easy way to do it. And then you go to change, and that's how you go it. So you would just select here, and then you would press set right here where my thumb is. But if you actually want to go into detail, you go info change, and that's how you would do that. So coming back into the menu system over here, that's the only thing I would tell you on this screen that I would say has any kind of level of importance as a novice. Other than that, auto power off. I put high. You don't have to worry about this, because if you're recording in low levels, you're never gonna have to worry about this. But it says recording time may be extended. Please be careful when touching the camera and the card, as they can get hotter than standard. So this is just trying to push your camera to the limit, if you know you're pushing it. But has a camera body maybe, okay, yeah, saying it can get really hot. Okay, so, but like I said, it's not something you ever have to worry about, because if you're shooting like 1080p, you're never gonna have to worry about that anyway. So let's see. Shutdown warning on, that stays on. I wouldn't touch that at all. Low res, I wouldn't touch this at all either, but it says when you're in standby mode, the screen is low res. I mean, it's just for menu settings, so why not? It's not a big deal. Autofocus. Now, autofocus, you're gonna do enabled. You don't wanna do disabled, so you're gonna have enabled. There's detection priority. I would say don't really worry about this. You could do detect only. And what that means is, like, to the best of my knowledge, detect priority is going to put priority over what is detecting over another thing, as opposed to just detecting one of those things. But we'll get into that in the next area, when we talk about selecting what you're detecting. But I like to go here. At first, when it started, it just was underneath the banner of, what was it? It wasn't just subject detect. It was, that's on auto. We'll get into that in a moment. It was this right here, because I realized when it says autofocus close up, so it had this was on. I'll explain what that is in a moment. But it also had autofocus the whole area. And I didn't like this, because this made it where you couldn't, I'll show you what that's like. Let me take this off, and then we're gonna come here. Looks my corner of my fish tank over there, don't mind. But you can't press on where you Wait a minute. Why is it allowing me to do that now? Okay, hold on. And this is where it got a little bit confusing. So that is area focus everywhere. And then I had demos on, and let me see if this is what, yes. So I had demos on. What this does is it's supposed to be where, and I had the setting originally and it just threw everything off. So I want to tell you guys, take that off. What that does is it doesn't allow you to click on it, but what it does is it's now going to autofocus the entire area of the screen normally, because that's what we already have the setting on. But now it's like if someone puts their hand up. So say if you're sitting in front of the camera and then you put your hand up and you go, oh, I want to put this thing up close to get, it's not focusing because of how close I am. Let me see if I can get my hand a little further away. So if where the fish tank is where you are sitting and then you put like an item up close because you're like, hey, I'm doing a preview of something. That's what they call a demo. You hold it up to the screen, and then when you're kind of displaying it, like, how you hold your hand up to the screen and, say if the screen is facing this way, like the camera, I'm sorry, I got it so zoomed in. Say if the camera's facing you this way and you hold something like an item up, like here, take a look at this to the screen. It will now automatically target what's in the foreground and do that. That gave me problems and I didn't like that. So what we're gonna do is, and I can take this off now. I mean, I can put this back on now. Well, hold on. We're doing our little autofocus thing. So I'm gonna take this off because I don't like having it on. I suggest you guys don't have that on either. Movie server autofocus speed, you could leave that as the default 7, but essentially what that means is if you wanted to kind of like zoom into different things slowly, almost like a cinematic way, you'd bring it slower. If you want it to be faster, you could do that as well. But coming back here, I like to go from this to the zone. That's how I like to do it, because this allows you to just have just a nice middle area zone. So that way, if you're recording yourself or family, just aim the camera in the middle. But if you need to, with a spur of the moment, change it, you could just go like this. And it's a big, broad area. So it's not something where you really need to be like, oh, I got to get the pinpoint exact. This is easier to move. If you're doing like the small pinpoint ones, and every time you press the button, it's going like a small area. And I think that becomes more annoying for your basic recording. So this is the setting that I would suggest to you guys. You can move that around just by pressing it. And that's the one that I like to use. So once again, subject auto detect, you could do that and it will do the auto detect. And it will go after like somebody's face and stuff like that. But what it's going to do now is this. It's going to subject to detect. It's going to detect only within the box that we have. That's why when you do the all area, now it's going to be detecting the whole area, but sometimes that can become a problem. So like I said, for simple, basic, recording, you guys, I say just this is my best recommendation is the one I just told you. This is not really important as well. This is not really important as well, and neither is this. For the purpose of basic recording. Okay, I was looking for another setting thing. So this one, you don't have to worry about that as well. This is just showing like the playback of your images. I won't really worry about that too much. The next really major thing is, these are the network settings. So one thing I would tell you this, because this is what I learned too. Come over here to airplane mode and put airplane mode on. If you are not using any online features, the online features stay on unless you put airplane mode. I found out about that. And to be honest, even though like you might not be a person who's like big into understanding all the things of your camera, just do that just to save yourself battery. Once you're able to kind of read through all the instructions, you really want to learn things in deeper, then you could realize, okay, now I'm going to do network connecting and this and that. But in the meantime, that turns everything off, because otherwise this thing is always running. You can't turn off, from my understanding, what I've been informed of is you can't turn off Bluetooth settings or other kind of stuff. It's always on. You can not have it connected to anything, but it's still always on, like as if on your phone you turn off Bluetooth, and even though you don't have your headphones connected, they're not paired with them, you just have that setting on. It's draining power. So put it on airplane mode and it takes that off. Already went into that mode here about in regards to doing the proxy stuff. Other than that, you really don't need to go into anything else here. Obviously your time, beep enabled if you want to have that. Let's see, screen brightness if you want to adjust that. The fan, now you don't have to worry about this because like I said, you're not going to be in that space where I keep it on auto and I keep it on medium. But for the most part, it's not something you really got to worry about because you're not going to be in those high settings, like I said, based on what we're going over inside this video here right now. And that's really about it. You can customize because you got custom switches on the top dial up here for C1 to C3. You guys don't need to worry about that if you're just learning the basics. Once again, just to be able to start recording, and that's it. So I would say don't worry about that. One thing I'm going to also say to you too is if you have your battery in the camera and you plug in a USB-C cable into it while the battery's in, because the battery has to be in, what will happen is it won't charge. If the camera's off, it'll charge the battery. If the camera's on, it won't charge the battery, but it'll bypass. You won't lose any juice on your battery, and now you'll be able to run your camera straight from the power coming into it from the USB-C. But it needs at least 30 watts or above to be able to do that. Custom buttons and this and that. This allows you to customize all the buttons like I showed you on there, 1 to 7 and whatnot, and the wheels and stuff like that. I would honestly leave all this stuff alone starting off because you're just going to confuse yourself and probably even mess up all of the buttons. And custom control black for the wheels, touch controls enabled. And then this is when you get into the more finer details. I wouldn't touch any of this as well if you are just learning to do the video stuff. And other than that, I made a My menu just for easy access to, you know, certain things that are important to me. But for the most part, if you aren't really changing much of your settings, which I don't really have to change much of these things either, then I wouldn't worry about it. The only reason why I would say image stabilization, obviously, most of the time you could just leave it on, but you know, that just gives me the ability to turn it off if I need to, if I'm working on a tripod or not, which I think this should be able to detect whether you are or not, and that shouldn't even be a big deal. I don't really know, but so far I've used the camera while on a tripod with the image stabilization enabled. Normally when you would have image stabilization in the lens, you would turn it off if you are on a tripod. So I'm not too sure how built-in IS works versus the lens IS, but normally with lens IS, you turn it off if you're on a tripod. The audio settings here, the reason why I leave that on there is because sometimes I'll go from my shotgun mic to my lav mic, and I had different settings for them as I explained to you earlier. So I want to be able to quickly adjust those. And that is really it. That is the end of this right here. So that's pretty much everything when it comes to the camera. Let me turn this off. Okay, you guys, that was just a basic rundown of, like I said, some of the settings just to get you guys started in basic video. Like I said, what made me want to make this video was because me coming into this space from this camera, from a digital SLR, there's a big difference. Basic SLR just had one codec, simple video settings, very easy. The autofocus didn't have all these menus. I don't even think it even had its own dedicated menu system for that. So for me coming into this space, it was definitely a challenge. And I figured that for you guys, it's probably the same thing. So I just wanted to do something simple. But like I said, there are a lot of people who have really detailed aspects on how to do video on this thing, all that kind of stuff. But a lot of them too are going to probably show you things like doing the raw, this and that, so that way later on you'd have to look at a whole different video in terms of doing color grading and things of that sort. So this was just kind of really basic way to show you guys how to get into just pressing record and just getting into it, especially on a low codec that is going to allow you guys to upload and even do basic, like say stitching. When I say editing, as far as for this, I don't mean color grading, but doing basic stitching things. Like maybe you pressed record, then you stopped, and then you recorded another frame. Now you want to put them together. You're running something in iMovie or even some kind of other basic video editing tool that might be on Windows. You probably, if you have a basic computer that's either like $300 computer, or maybe your computer's a little dated, 2021, I don't know, depending on the setting, the situation, whatever the case is, the specs, you might not be able to handle things like 4K, you know what I mean? And if you just want to do home movies or whatever the case is, even if you're getting into content creation, but it's like you just don't have the computer to handle that much heavy stuff, it's nice to be able to say, well, these are the codecs that are going to be able to handle it. Basic 1080p is still going to look nice, as you guys see here. I'm recording in 1080p right now on the lowest codec, and it still looks nice because modern cameras nowadays just make it look nice and whatnot. Now, granted, I do have a lighting system, but nonetheless, if you are doing your basic recording and you have good light, maybe outside, whatever the case is, it's going to look nice. So anyway, you guys, hopefully this was helpful for you guys to run through, like I said, the basics. And if you guys have any questions about the camera or running the camera, just let me know. Post them down below. As always, you guys, like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.